Well, surprise, it's me again. To celebrate 500 episodes of Pride Daily, it's the A to Z of LGBTQ+, all in one. We first put this out as 8 episodes, not long after the podcast launched. Enjoy! A is for activists. People like Marsha P. Johnson, who was a black trans woman, drag performer and sex worker in New York. She was one of the main instigators of the Stonewall riots there in 1969, when queer people finally pushed back against harassment by the authorities. Marsha spent much of her life fighting for equality and working to support queer young people. Randolph Wickers, a human rights activist and author, and was friends with Marsha. He tells Frameline she co-founded the organisation STAR, along with a friend and fellow trans activist, Sylvia Rivera.
Street transvestite action revolutionaries. And they had managed to get some small-time mobster who ran a porno store to give them an apartment or something in the Lower East Side in this slum building. They operated as a shelter for homeless transgender youth. And they felt that that was one of their great accomplishments in life.
Marsha died at the age of 46 in 1992 in suspicious circumstances. The body was found in New York's Hudson River. B is for bears. Large, hairy, queer men who identify as bears. There's disagreement over who first came up with the term, but an article appeared in The Advocate magazine in Los Angeles in 1979 called Who's Who in the Zoo. In it, George Mazzei characterised gay men as 7 types of animals, including bears, owls and gazelles. C is for coming out, and the first person known to have done this publicly is Karl Heinrich Ulrichs. The German writer told his friends and family he was sexually attracted to other men in 1862, when this was massively taboo. 5 years later, he was heckled off stage after telling a meeting of lawyers and academics in Germany to decriminalise homosexuality. Ulrichs is seen as a pioneer of the modern gay rights movement. D is for Dykes on Bikes, an organisation that works to support and empower queer women and LGBTQ+ people generally. It was born in 1976 in San Francisco, when lesbians on motorbikes led the city's first Pride Parade. A local newspaper asked if the group had a name. One of them came up with Dykes on Bikes, and it stuck. They organise rides and charity events and support queer education, with sister organisations now in place all over the world. Its co-founder, Sunny Wolf, died in 2018, aged 69. Here's what Dykes on Bikes meant to her.
A ride down Market Street with all those people looking and applauding and cheering and riding with other women who ride motorcycles has got to be one of the highlights of my life.
E is for employment of homosexuals and other sex perverts in government. This was a report by America's Senate in 1950, stating that since being gay is a mental illness, homosexuals were a security risk. The logic was, those who engage in overt acts of perversion lack the emotional stability of normal persons. What became known as the Lavender Scare saw around 500 people sacked from their government jobs and thousands more from the military. F is for Friend of Dorothy. Judy Garland's Wizard of Oz film from 1939, in which she played Dorothy, is generally thought to be behind this description of a gay man. It features the songs Come Out Wherever You Are, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and a story about loneliness and not fitting in. Plus, there's an effeminate line who says in one of the Wizard of Oz books, any friend of Dorothy must be our friend as well. G is for gay magazines. The world's first, as far as we know, was Der Eigener in Berlin back in 1896. It means the own in German. It was published by the writer Adolf Brandt and featured political articles and poems, plus nude photos he got his male lovers to pose for. The magazine pushed social, sexual and legal boundaries, and Brandt was sued for outing 2 politicians. H is for Rita Hester. She's the reason we have Transgender Day of Remembrance every November. The 34-year-old was a black trans woman who was stabbed to death in her apartment in 1998 in Boston in America. She'd been planning to watch figure skating with a friend on TV, but never showed up. Trans advocate Gwendolyn Ann Smith launched the Day of Remembrance in her memory. Chastity Bowick's director of Boston's Transgender Emergency Fund. She tells the GBH network Rita continues to make an impact.
She's moved mountains for our communities without even being here. She sparked an international movement that allowed the world to see that this is a marginalized group of people whose lives are being taken at a high rate.
Over the last 12 months, 320 trans and gender diverse people have been murdered around the world, most of them transgender women of colour. Rita's murder's never been solved. Police say the case remains open. I is for I Will Survive, the 70s disco track that quickly became an LGBTQ+ anthem. It was actually released by Gloria Gaynor as a B-side, but went on to become the defining song of her career. Queer people connected with its themes of defiance and empowerment, and it took on an even deeper meaning during the AIDS crisis. The track's been covered by various other divas over the years, including Diana Ross and Miss Piggy. J is for Christine Jorgensen. She became famous in the 1950s as the first American to have gender reassignment surgery. The 26-year-old Army veteran travelled to Denmark for treatment, as it was only available in Europe at the time. It included psychotherapy, hormone injections, and a number of operations. Christine went on to advocate for trans people, and her experience led to a national conversation about gender identity. She was named Woman of the Year in 1953 by the Scandinavian Societies of Greater New York.
I want to say how deeply I am touched by this honor that has been given to me tonight, but I feel that those who should have been with us and were unable to be here are the ones that are really responsible for my success. That's my doctors and my friends.
Just after her surgery, Christine wrote to her parents. She told them, "Nature made a mistake, which I have now corrected, and now I am your daughter." K is for the Kinsey scale, showing sexuality is not just about being totally straight or totally gay. It was created by Alfred Kinsey, a sexologist and biologist, in his book Sexual Behaviour in the Human Male in 1948. He argued many people aren't exclusively one or the other, and that sexuality can be fluid and change over time. L is for leather. Its association with LGBTQ+ culture seems to date back to the end of World War II. Thousands of US soldiers were discharged from the army for being gay and ended up gravitating towards America's biggest cities. Many joined the motorbike clubs that had started popping up at around the same time. These meetings may have helped replicate the sense of community with other men that experienced in the army. Leathers were practical, but also symbolised the overt masculinity of biker culture, and they were a pushback against the gay male stereotype of effeminacy. M is for the Mattachine Society, formed by a group of gay men in America in the 1950s. Members got together in secret to talk about the discrimination they experienced. This is a time when, amongst other things, gay people were banned from the military or working in government, and their sexuality got them fired from their jobs. The society worked for equality and fought prejudice and oppression, laying the groundwork for the gay rights movement that followed. Harry Hay was one of the founders. He told the Our Time programme back in 1983 he'd hoped it could be the start of something much bigger.
I dreamt even then of the idea that there would be networks of sanctuaries, of places where we could come and out of which we would be able to move and organize and change things across the country. I didn't think that we would be able to flower as we have. I didn't expect that fast. But I did dream of maybe 50 or 60 networks of core groups around the country.
The group's name comes from the French collective Société Mattachine that used dance and drama to highlight social injustice. They performed wearing masks, symbolising how gay people had to keep themselves hidden and anonymous. N is for Nighthawks. This was the first major gay film in the UK, all about a geography teacher who's straight by day and cruising for sex and love in London's gay bars by night. It focuses on how mundane and repetitive things have become in Jim's life. He picks up a guy, teaches a class, picks up a new guy, and so on. Nighthawks was criticised by the press at the time, quelle surprise, but also by gay people who felt the realism of the film was too negative. O is for outing by the British gay rights group Outrage in the 1990s. It argued the sexuality of LGBTQ+ politicians and bishops in anti-queer political parties and churches should be made public to expose their hypocrisy. This was criticised at the time, but co-founder Peter Tatchell, the human rights campaigner, remains unrepentant. He's since said they should have started outing earlier because it stopped certain lawmakers voting against equality. P is for the pink triangle. They were used as badges in concentration camps in Nazi Germany to identify men who'd been sent there for being gay. Hitler saw homosexuality as a threat to the survival of the German people and his campaign to purify the country both racially and culturally. It's estimated as many as 15,000 gay men were placed in camps between 1933 and 1945. They were treated harshly as the lowest of the low. 2/3 are believed to have died. Stefan Kaczynski from Poland was just 17 when he was sent to a concentration camp after his love letter to a male soldier he'd been seeing was intercepted by Nazi police. He told the USC Show Foundation a court sentenced him to 5 years.
They started to shout, "You must be punished, you must be isolated, you are like a whore, Polish whore." And my mother was there, she was sitting, we couldn't speak nothing. And it was the last thing of my mother.
The pink triangle was originally intended as a badge of shame. It's since been reclaimed, though, as a symbol of gay pride, protest and liberation. Q is for Queer as Folk, the UK TV drama that broke boundaries with its depiction of the lives of gay men in Manchester and England. It launched in 1999, and from the outset, writer Russell T Davies didn't hold back. Episode 1 featured 15-year-old Nathan having sex with Stuart, who's 29. The show's sponsor, Beck's Beer, pulled out. The programme's unapologetic portrayal, putting gay men front and centre of the story, is seen as groundbreaking. And a fun fact, I'm actually an extra in the first episode. R is for Bayard Rustin. He was the main organiser of the March on Washington in 1963, where Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech in front of more than 250,000 people. Bayard's recently been the subject of a Netflix film. It looks at the homophobia and racism he came up against and how he wouldn't hide his sexuality for political convenience. S is for Matthew Shepard. The 21-year-old was savagely attacked in 1998 in America because he was gay. Matthew was lured from a bar in Wyoming by two men pretending to be gay. They beat him and pistol whipped him, leaving him for dead in freezing temperatures tied to a fence. He spent 18 hours there. Matthew never regained consciousness and died in hospital 6 days after the attack. His mother and father couldn't get to their son for 2 days because they'd been living in Saudi Arabia at the time. Judy Shepard told Katie Couric's US talk show about finally seeing Matthew.
The press was surrounding the hospital. We went up to ICU. We weren't even sure it was him because his face was swollen, and but then when we got closer, we could see scars and little marks on his face. And one of his eyes was partially open. We could see color, and he was a beautiful child even then.
Matthew's killers both got life sentences. His murder's seen as one of the worst anti-gay hate crimes in American history. T is for This Book is Gay, described as an instruction manual for queer young people, their parents and their allies. It was written by former schoolteacher Juno Dawson nearly 10 years ago to counter the lack of education on the subject. Made the headlines this year when it got in the crosshairs of far-right bigots in the US, becoming the country's 9th most banned book. Juno, who's trans, says it was written to give young LGBTQ+ people hope. U is for Union. In 2001, the Netherlands became the first country in the world to legalise same-sex marriage. 4 couples tied the knot at Amsterdam City Hall at just after midnight on April the 1st. V is for the Village People, the American disco group formed in 1977. The biggest hit, YMCA, was released the next year and became a massive gay anthem. And you can see why, with lyrics like, "They have everything for you men to enjoy," and "You can hang out with all the boys." W is for Wisconsin, the first state in America to outlaw discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. Up until 1982, people could lose their jobs for this reason. They could also be denied education, bank accounts, and housing. Posed a bit of a contradiction, though, because it was still technically against the law to be queer in Wisconsin then. That was dealt with the following year when all sexual relations between consenting adults were legalised, as long as there was no money involved. It also decriminalised sexual perversion. Fine, it's still progress. Historian Michael Takash tells Radio Milwaukee the arguments in favour of the bill didn't actually focus on sexuality.
The question was not, is gay good? It wasn't a moral question. It was more of a ethical question. Should rights be equal for everyone? And they kept it very, very narrow so that when it came to influencing politicians, they really couldn't argue.
X is for Lil Nas X. The US rapper fully embraces his LGBTQ+ identity in his music, his videos, and on tour. He came out as gay in 2019, then later said he was possibly a little bit bisexual, and then he was back to being gay again. The 26-year-old's a multi-platinum selling artist. His single Old Town Road spent 19 weeks at the top of America's Billboard Hot 100, the chart's longest-running #1 song ever. Y is for the Umbo Centre, the hub of LGBTQ+ nightlife in Gran Canaria. Opened in 1982, and it's packed with queer bars and clubs. One's open from 2 till 6 a.m. every day of the year. No thanks, I'm 46. The centre's also at the heart of Pride events each May and December. And Z is for Ziggy the Zebra. This is a book teaching young children about self-acceptance and celebrating their differences. Ziggy's not like the other zebras because he's got bright rainbow stripes. Can he be brave and show his true colours? And if you like that, there's a second A to Z of LGBTQ+ for you to catch up on. Check out our episodes from last February 3rd to the 7th. Thank you again for helping us reach 500 episodes. I'm Kev McGrath. See you tomorrow.